We had a pretty daunting task in front of us. How are we going to get the gospel out into parks and crowded areas of pretty unfamiliar territory in central and southern Turkey? We thought it might be a little bit more difficult this time because of the turbulent political situation and demonstrations on the streets. Would the people misunderstand what we were trying to communicate? And how would the police respond? But with lots of prayer and a team of 12 crazy friends, we headed out on our 15-day journey, stepping out in faith with a sort of stomach-turning feeling of nervousness, excitement, and anticipation. Like Paul said, thanks be to God who always leads us on in triumphal procession in Christ, and through us spreads everywhere the fragrance of the knowledge of Him. When we look at the speeches in the book of Acts, we see how the disciples were able to hold audiences of very skeptical or even hostile people by going through a very sincere and in-depth review of the people's history and stories. At the end, they were always able to present Christ as the climax and culmination of all things and set Him up like a shining crown on top of all this precious history. We tried to do a similar thing by approaching people respectfully and using totally Turkish music and telling the story of Abraham using puppets, dancing, narration, and folk music. People watched intently as they saw the story unfold, and they clapped for joy as Abraham and Sarah finally received their child. They waited with bated breath as Abraham laid his child on the altar, and they rejoiced as Isaac was untied, set free from the altar, and the family was reunited, praising God. At the end of our story, the puppet narrator asked, "What about our story? Does the God who loved and cared for Abraham and Sarah also love and care for us? We all know that God sent a sacrifice to save Abraham's son, but could He send a sacrifice to save me, to save you? Well, He could, and He did. And He sent Jesus as the true and final sacrifice, and with this, He saves us and brings us into His kingdom." It was always a joy to watch people's reaction to this surprising news, and it was always a joy to watch Him work wherever we went. The first place we stopped, we weren't actually able to do our theater performance because the police didn't give us permission, so we just tried to play some music and talk to people and find whoever we could in the park. People were very friendly, and even amongst packs of rowdy small-town youth that we just met, God gave us great opportunities to preach the good news. And as we were leaving late that night, a bunch of students insisted that we come to their house for breakfast. When we went, we were received like royalty and given a massive feast. There were deliciously fried pastries and some sort of crazy Georgian potato spread that made our mouths explode with joy. We laughed, shared stories, and then they sent us on our way with lots of hugs and kisses. At another place, we didn't have quite such a warm welcome, but we were met with lots of suspicious questioners. One guy from our team was approached by a couple of guys, and a curious but sort of suspicious crowd gathered. Thankfully, God gave him a few wise and gentle words that disarmed the most aggressive questioner, and this changed the whole atmosphere. And right there, as our friend explained the good news in detail, God created a mini gospel lecture hall out of what could have been a fairly hostile crowd. At another point, we saw Him transform our schedule, and through some unexpected delays, He put us in exactly the right space at exactly the right time. God worked wonders wherever we went, and it was amazing to watch Him turn ordinary parks and waterfronts into open-air theaters, filled with the news of His love and truth, radiating out to everyone within range. We got to see droves full of people run right into an encounter with the gospel, and we saw His words of truth seep through conversations into some very dark, dry, and forgotten cracks. We could never ever have done any of this with our own planning or made this happen with our own strength, but we're so thankful that we got to watch Him do it. He's always ready to take ordinary people and create amazing opportunities to shine His light into darkness and to establish faith in Him where none believe. And what a privilege it is to walk with Him hand in hand into the unknown.